A lot of us grew up playing games that we never actually chose, with rules that kept changing. Today, we're talking about gamification, metrics, and the question that might change everything. Is your life the game that you actually want to be playing? Let's get into it. Hey guys, I'm Maddie, and welcome to the Anti-Alienation Project. Here, I talk about a lot of things related to manipulation, child psychological harm, culture, social issues, etc. And today's video is actually, believe it or not, a video that my husband suggested. He suggested this video to me, so it's not my regular content at all. But after watching it, I do find this applicable in many different ways. This video is called You're Thinking About Data All Wrong, and it's by Pablo Torre Finds Out. I have the full video linked in the live chat. Let me know where you're coming from in the world. As always, I'm in Utah. And let's just get right into it. So, first, I need to define gamification for anyone like me who is new to all of this. And I'm excited to get into it. I love learning about new things. So, let's just get to this. This is from good old Wikipedia. Gamification is the process of integrating game design elements and principles into non-game contexts. The goal is to increase user engagement and motivation through the use of gaming elements such as points, badges, leadership boards, and more. So basically, gamification is integrating game design elements into every different aspect of life, you could say. And I think it's an important thing to define what we're talking about here. And I want to also show you this clip. So some of the game elements I want to pay attention to in this video are points, badges, and leaderboards. So I'm going to be looking at gamification through a lens of dysfunctional family systems and also healing from such systems. I grew up in a very dysfunctional family system, and I am also on a healing journey from that dysfunctional family system. So we're going to talk about points first. So points are basic elements of games. They're typically rewarded for the successful accomplishment of specified activities within the gamified environment. I think we all know what points are. They serve to numerically represent a player's progress. You can have different types of points, like experience points, redeemable points, reputation points, etc. But it says one of the most important purposes of points is to provide feedback. It's a metric that you can rely on to know how well you're doing. And then you have badges. So badges are different than points because they are visual representations of things you have achieved. They can be earned and collected within the gaming environment. Now, right off the bat, if you have lived in a narcissistic family system, you might be thinking and drawing some parallels in your head. For instance, points. Conditional love is basically earning points, earning little bits of love throughout the days and weeks by making your parent or parents happy. Badges, the visual representations, would be different achievements as a child that you have earned and that reflect well on your family of origin, such as, maintaining a good appearance, getting good grades, straight A's, being a sports star, anything that shows that you are a status symbol for your family of origin. Finally, we have some leaderboards. So leaderboards rank players according to their relative success, measuring them against a certain criterion. So this is very interesting to me because when I started thinking about leaderboards, I keep wanting to say leadership boards. I guess they're just leaderboards. Leaderboards in gamification, what came to mind instantly for me was how each child in the family system, the dysfunctional family system, has a different role. You're given a different role and you play a role in that family. You might have the favorited child, the scapegoated child, the forgotten child, whatever it might be. And you can also switch roles from time to time. So, like this says, these positive effects of competition are more likely if the respective competitors are at approximately the same performance level. So these roles can switch based on how you perform. I just wanted to point out those 3 those three aspects of gamification: points, leaderboard, and what was the other one? And badges, before we get into the actual video. So now I'm going to get into the actual video now that we've defined gamification. And I'm curious to see in the live chat, I wanted to make it more engaging with you guys, to let me know your thoughts and your questions, and I will get to them maybe throughout the video, maybe at the end of the video, I'm not sure, but I really want to show this to you guys and hear your feedback. Let's get into it.
Has taken over everything beyond sports, and how clearly I've been outsourcing the most fundamental parts of my, you call it values. They are values.
I'm sure we'll talk about all this, but like, there's one theory in which people that are really into sports and games should be immune to some of this capture by external metrics, because we should be aware of how different scoring systems are and how like they can change our mood. But I think there's also a way in which games prime us to just go into that mind state of just like, there's the point system, let's do it, let's go for it. So I went into this
I just want to point out too that games are naturally competitive. Most of the time games are competitive. So it makes sense that a lot of this will be applicable to dysfunctional family system where there's a lot of competition imposed on you from your parents in this system will compete with their children, competition among the children to compete for favor with the parents. Just a lot of competition.
First, I was thinking about games, then I was thinking about social media. And I was, for a while, hooked into this thought that, like, people are like, oh, this is a new thing. These are algorithmic gamification. This is new. And I came to see where we're at now as the end point of a 300 to 500 year movement towards bureaucratization and towards like ranking everything that everybody does in clear outputs that large scale governments and corporations can see. And now I think like the algorithmatization is just the little bit of the tip of the iceberg. And at the same time, I'm looking at Twitter being like, I think this explains a lot.
Oh my God, just like the ways in which we are living, again, up to an ancient observation. Because the other person in your book who you quote, and I'm just like banging my head against the wall being like, how have I not seen it so clearly, is Thomas Hobbes.
Yes.
Right? So what Hobbes says, as you explain, is that the ultimate power is not military or economic power. It is the power to define terms and control language. And this notion, I need you to sort of unpack for all of us, because the Hobbesian argument is, if you control language and define terms, you control people from the inside.
This is a study of governance and power. And he spends a huge amount of time talking about how governance flows from whoever has power. And people mostly assume that it means military power. But he says incredibly clearly that the greatest power is the power of the definition of words, especially defining words like good, bad, virtuous, vice, because then you are telling people what to do in society, in governance. And I was like, you know what games are? They're like art governments. They're things where we play around with incentives and rules and constraints to shape people's action. For me, games are this incredible.
Yes. So right off the bat, we have something explosive. Hobbes says power is not violence. Power is controlling definitions. To me, this is so relatable to our society today. So if you think about it, who controls the meaning of the following words, for instance? Hate speech, misinformation, safety, extremism, racism, trauma, narcissism. Whoever defines the terms controls the universe in a moral sense. Whoever defines the terms that we use actually shapes people. For example, if I can define what good means, I don't need to control your body because I control your mind. So the big idea, especially related to child psychological abuse, what I typically talk about on my channel, is that when you're being psychologically controlled by a parent, life has been turned into a game you didn't consent to. And your parent, who is manipulative and psychologically harming you, is controlling you often by defining words. They have the power of language. It's a little bit different. Games are fun because they're voluntary. Metrics are dangerous because they become compulsory. In this modern world, everybody is seemingly being forced into score systems, whether or not you recognize that. And living in a dysfunctional family system is very much like a high demand game, except it's not voluntary. And the metrics are more important than anything else. The metrics are more important than the experience of playing the game, than the practice leading up to the game, than the relationships you build in the game. None of that really matters. It's all about the metrics. He's going to get into the metrics next, which is really interesting.
Incredibly interesting art form where someone designs a new self for you. I mean, the fancy language I have for this is that games are the art form of agency itself, right? Like when a game designer is telling you what to want and then telling you what methods to use and then creating your obstacle environment. And so suddenly, you're playing soccer and you're becoming a being of feet, or you're playing rock climbing and you're becoming a being that has to use balance and precision to balance your way up the rock. Or you're playing, my new dumb obsession is Kendama. Do you know Kendama?
No, what is it?
It looks like ball and cup game, but with multiple balls and spikes. And skateboarding culture got onto it. And now you do these insane tricks where you're throwing things and juggling and flipping and then catching in the cup. Each of these games has a goal and it has a constraint. And then it by playing with those goals and constraints, it can shape a kind of activity. It can tell you exactly what to pay attention to and exactly how you're going to interact. They can make you, in basketball, hyper-focused on making shots. I mean, think how different basketball would be if there weren't 2 and 3 point shots, right? It would completely change the feel of the game. So those little decisions completely shape the feel. And with games, usually, we are shaping the feel for our pleasure. You are pushing around the rules and the scoring system to create this beautiful experience. And a lot of what makes the experience so beautiful is its simplicity and clarity. We all have the same goal and it's blissfully clear, and you can be blissfully concentrated, and becomes absolutely clear what a good move is and what an elegant move is.
But the definition of what good is, again, to go back to that premise, the clarity of, oh, you're good. This is a good school. Right. You're doing well. You have this number of points. Part of what I think about is how a gamified system allows us the opportunity to outsource what is a complicated decision that ultimately redounds to our own personal sense of self and our confidence, right? It's saying to us, I will let you know when you're doing great. And so the more you strive to be great by those standards, the more that you can seemingly tell yourself the box is checked. But the other sort of...
Yeah. And this is great. I love this comment right here. Good girl, good boy. It reminds me of, we have a little puppy right now and we're training the puppy. And this reminds me of training a puppy. The person who's in control of the language has all the power. And so you're training this puppy what good means, what it means to be a good dog. You have all the power of the word good girl, good boy. And you're training them according to what you want them to believe this word means. And in that way, you can shape their behavior. They will, go outside to use the bathroom. They will sit and you say, good girl. And then you train them how to behave. In the same way, whoever has the power in our system,
all of this is
whoever can define the terms in our system has the power to shape beliefs, to shape behavior.
The clarity of a metric also keeps us playing the game even when it makes us miserable, even when it isn't good for us. And how do you explain that aspect of it?
I think one of the most important distinctions in thinking about games is the difference between the goal of a game and your purpose in playing the game. So usually in a game, these are different. So the goal of the game is the target you're trying to hit in the game, and the purpose of the game is why you play the game. For some people, the goal is just to win, and the purpose is just to win. I call these achievement players. If your goal and your purpose are the same, if what you want to do is win, then there's no difference. But for a lot of us, there's a deep difference. So I think the easiest place to see this is like party games. In party games, the goal is to win, but the purpose is to have fun. Like if I play Twister or charades, I'm doing it to have fun. To have fun, I have to try to win. But afterwards, if we all had a great time and I lost, I would be an asshole if I felt bad about it, right? Like if you came in dead last in Twister and everyone had a great time, you should realize the bigger purpose has been fulfilled. Similarly, for rock climbing, by the way, I love rock climbing. I'm a terrible rock climber. I am a garbage rock climber. I am mediocre beyond belief, and I've been doing it for like 2 decades now. The reason I rock climb is, I mean, it keeps me healthy, but also it feels amazing to move elegantly. I'm like a very clumsy person, and rock climbing, the intense goal of rock climbing forced me to find like delicate movement. And also like the absorption in rock climbing is one of the only things that will get my brain to shut up.
Okay, so this is a great takeaway from this video. And I've just included short clips, by the way. The whole video is like 45 minutes long, so definitely go watch the full thing. But he makes he differentiates between the purpose of playing a game versus the goal. And I think this is really important. So the distinction is very important for healing, actually. So you have the goal, which is what the game demands, and the purpose is why you chose it, why you chose to play it. So healthy people can separate themselves from and the goal from the purpose of any activity or game. Often, trauma survivors cannot, like myself, because survival in the past, for years or decades, required winning approval, avoiding punishment, and performing perfectly. So healing is something new that we're not familiar with. It's the idea of playing without being consumed by the game. And this is actually a really important message to live out. The fact that you can play a game and create something without chasing metrics or approval, that you can work without being obsessed with it or without being owned by it, that you can live and that you can play a game without scoring yourself and without judging yourself. So the goal versus the purpose. He gave the rock climbing example as the goal might be to get to the top of the rock wall, but the purpose might be to have fun or to get exercise. So the purpose of games is an explanation for the meaning of life, honestly. You, quote, voluntarily taking on unnecessary obstacles to create the possibility of struggling to overcome them. You don't have to play a game. You don't have to climb a rock wall. You don't have to play basketball. You don't have to study for a test and take a test to get into med school, for example. You're taking on an unnecessary obstacle in order to create the possibility of struggling to overcome that obstacle. You don't have to choose to heal from your trauma. You don't. You can live in a victim mindset and live your victimhood out the rest of your life. You can repeat the cycle for your kids and traumatize them, abuse them. You don't have to heal. Healing is voluntarily taking on unnecessary obstacles to create the possibility of struggling to overcome them. It's exactly what healing is. We choose challenges, we grow through the struggle, and we find meaning through effort, through difficulties. That's why when you're playing a game, you feel alive. That's why people love games to begin with. And in this healing process, when you're healing from any type of abuse, but in my case, child psychological abuse, the child is forced into overcoming obstacles that they did not choose while they're still living with a parent. And these obstacles could be, but are not limited to, emotional instability, walking on eggshells, being in fight or fight mode, trying to meet impossible expectations, trying to get the conditional love of a parent, facing constant criticism or judgment, or having to be the parent emotionally, role reversal. These are just a few things that might be unnecessary obstacles that you do not choose living in a dysfunctional family system. Of course, in this case, the child is not voluntarily taking on these obstacles. They are trapped inside of them. In a healthy game, the goal is something like score points, climb the wall, finish the race. In an abusive home, the goal becomes don't upset mom, don't trigger dad, stay small, be perfect, don't be noticed, survive. So the child essentially grows up thinking, my purpose is to be safe. My purpose is to not rock the boat, go unnoticed, be invisible. So to summarize, games create unnecessary obstacles for joy. Abuse, on the other hand, creates unnecessary obstacles for control. And for the child who is constantly struggling, the struggle when they're being forced to live in a family system like this, it's not leading to growth. It's leading to hypervigilance, survival, anxiety, depression, identity loss, and so much more. So the obstacles in abuse are not there to help you become stronger. They're there to keep you smaller. However, if we go back to the original concept of overcoming obstacles, this is where the hope comes in for healing, because healing truly is reclaiming your own voluntary struggle. Like I said, you don't have to choose to heal. You can go through anything difficult and choose to be a victim for the rest of your life. You have that option. To choose to heal is to choose a voluntary struggle. Healing is when you begin to realize a lot of things, specifically that you have the ability to choose your own challenges now, that you don't have to prove your worth through suffering anymore, and that you can stop playing rigged games. You have a choice. Healing is turning your struggle back into choice, realizing you do have a choice. Unfortunately, sometimes trauma survivors, they do keep playing these bad games. It's what they know. It's what they're comfortable with. It's why sometimes, even unknowingly, without doing this on purpose, we may repeat the cycle. A lot of people don't know that they have the option to create new rules and play a new game. They are so entrenched in the game they have been brought up in, they don't even know that they can create a different gaming structure. So what do? Adults who are abused often unconsciously recreate the gaming structure they were abused in by demanding of themselves, of others, or even of their children the same things that their own parents demanded of them, like perfectionism, people-pleasing, overworking, or chasing approval. And because their nervous system learned that struggle equals love, safety, worth, that is what they will perpetuate. So, to find meaning in life after abuse is to choose voluntary obstacles, but to choose the right voluntary obstacles. To decide to play a new game according to your own rules and no one else's. This is your redemption arc. And he's right in the video. The meaning of life is not to avoid all obstacles. It's to choose obstacles that are aligned with your values, freely chosen, not forced upon you, and that are connected to a sense of joy and purpose. The goal in life, at least in my opinion, is not to live without a struggle. The goal is to stop struggling to win points for someone else's scoreboard. Now let's get back into the video.
So I can actually have like silence in my brain. So the goal of rock climbing is to get up the rock. The purpose of rock climbing for me is the beauty of movement and clarity of mind and soul. And the interesting thing there is I cannot get that cleansingness of my soul without trying to win while I rock climb, but it actually doesn't matter. When I go to the gym, if I try and fail all day to hit this climb, when I leave, I still feel good. My body still feels good. My mind still feels cleansed. So one important thing about games, and you have the right attitude towards games, and this is not the way everyone does it. You keep goal and purpose separate. The game tells you the goal, but you choose the game for your own purposes. And that, I think, is a huge dimension of freedom that we often don't have with metrics. If your goal was to increase the richness of your experience here, then you should have held back because you should have been a little bit guided by the purpose. The purpose should have been treated a little bit and guided how intensely you go for that goal. So you're asking me about the purpose of games. I'm going to try to give you an answer, and then I'm going to try to tell you that it's also an explanation of the meaning of life. And then we cannot forget. And then we can talk about how both professional sports and bureaucratic metrics are the opposite of it.
Yeah, this is a hell of a way to start the new year. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Okay. So you're asking what the value of games is and how we can lose out on the value of games by over-optimizing in a professional environment. So what is the value of games? I think the best understanding of the value of games, and by games here I mean board games and sports and all this stuff, comes from a philosopher named Bernard Suits. Bernard Suits wrote in the 70s this beautiful book called The Grasshopper that was kind of lost and then recovered. It's a cult classic. And he defines a game. And he says what a game is voluntarily taking on unnecessary obstacles to create the possibility of struggling to overcome them. You have to follow the constraints or it doesn't count. If you call a lift, it doesn't count as crossing the finish line of a marathon. Similarly, if you thought the goal of basketball was to pass the ball through the net, period, and that's where the value was, then you would take a step ladder at night with no opponents and pass the ball through as much as possible. But that's stupid. That's stupid because the value of making baskets is intrinsically connected with a particular set of constraints that sets a methodology. The value of making a basket is in dribbling and jumping and shooting, often with opponents. So this means that whatever the value is, it is in the process, not the outcome.
We're going to get to that in a second, but I wanted to mention metrics for a second. So games have goals and they also have constraints. And metrics are a part of that. Metrics can be an act of governance. For instance, we have social media metrics. We have engagement that can shape behavior. Algorithms often play as like an invisible lawmaker. So we're always being governed by metrics, but also incentives. And in these families, dysfunctional families, it's the abusive parent who creates the metrics. For instance, a good daughter or a good son will be obedient. To be loved is to be compliant. To be healthy is to be thin. To be successful is to be beautiful. That is just a few things. Those are just a few examples that might be in play here. So abuse in this sense might be when someone replaces your internal compass, your own values, with their metrics and their goals, constraints, their scoreboard. So and this is literally a mass scale version of what happens in toxic families, by the way, everything that happens across social media. Everyone performs, adapts, metrics replace meaning. But let's let him finish his thought here because this is really important too.
But if you're hyper incentivized to win by the rules, then you're going to ignore that spirit and you're going to cheese and spam whenever you can and destroy the spirit of the game.
The guardrails that we've relied on historically, and this now speaks to the actual legal system and politics, as well as all of the games we're referencing, has been shame, right? Like there's this assertion of like, this is f***ed up, man. Like you're a bad friend. You're not fun to play with. You are violating the spirit of what we're here to do. The macro observation that I have though, is that shame has never felt less effective than it does right now. And it's not merely just who the president is. I also think about, frankly, a system, a capitalist system, in which the one thing that matters is growth, is more, is the green arrow going up and to the right, is the thing that is incentivizing and teaching all of us, conditioning all of us.
Right.
We need to win. We're here to win.
We're so on the same page. One way to put what's happening is the good thing that happens with games is when you play the game with the goals and rules in mind.
Okay, before he gets into that, I want to back up a little bit about his basketball analogy. I think it's brilliant. So the basketball analogy, I think, is an analogy that teaches that value is in the process more than the outcome. His original quote was, quote, "If the goal of basketball was just to put the ball in the net, you could cheat. You could use a ladder with no one around and you'd win. But that misses the true value of the game, which is how you play. The dribbling, the jumps, the competition, the struggle, not just the final score. The score only has meaning because it's earned through the process." And this touches at the heart of psychological abuse. The abuse dynamic often says that the outcome is all that matters. Approval, compliance, perfect behavior, perfect appearance, reflecting well on the family. So the child learns to game the system sometimes, just like somebody taking a ladder up to the net and putting the basketball through the hoop. A child in a dysfunctional family system like this might learn, as long as I get the outcome I want, it doesn't matter how I did it. And that truly destroys a child's inner life. It destroys their self-esteem. It destroys their ability to work through hard things. It destroys their perception of what is worth fighting for, of hard work. This is so damaging because the process of growth is exactly where meaning is. In basketball, the joy is movement, improving your skills over time, developing relationships with others, learning how to pass the ball, learning how to have different defense mechanisms. All of these different things come together. In life, the joy is learning who you are, overcoming your fears, working hard to accomplish your goals, building connections with others, exercising your choices. But if somebody teaches you, it doesn't matter how you do it, just look perfect, behave perfectly, don't disrupt, make our family look amazing, win the approval of everyone you meet. I don't care how you do it, you just need to do it. You become obsessed with outcomes instead of focusing on the process of achieving them. Healing, which I like to talk about more, is the opposite of that, by the way. Healing, like the true gameplay, is taking on obstacles that you choose, valuing the process more than any external approval, doing things because they feed you, they challenge you, they will improve your moral character, not because you want to score points or achieve metrics. Becoming skillful instead of compliant. In the basketball metaphor, healing would be focusing on your dribbling, your hand-eye control, your movement, your joy, not making every shot perfectly, and certainly not using a ladder to win. Abuse pushes you to take the ladder. Healing teaches you to love the game and the process of it, the struggle, the metamorphosis.
But you keep your eye on the larger purpose, which is bigger, right? And that purpose could be fun, it could be community, it could be like developing humanity, it could be joy. But when the scoring system doesn't give you that larger purpose, when it misses morally or spiritually or aesthetically, we either hold back or we know how to tweak the scoring system and the rules. If, on the other hand, you become so invested in the scoring system that you forget all the other values, if you become hyper-focused and let the scoring system set all of your values, if your only values are, here's this number, make it go up for your whole life, then you've lost this larger reflective stance to start tweaking the rules and knowing that a scoring system isn't working for you or knowing that it isn't working for society, to understand. Quantitative knowledge as it works out in institutions, works by identifying a context-invariant kernel, something that everyone can understand no matter their context, and isolating it and keeping it stable, and then making everyone collect into the same thing. And so suddenly what you've created is an engineered piece of information that travels easily between contexts precisely because we've stripped anything context specific out of it, because we've removed any nuance from it, and anything that requires a huge amount of background experience to understand.
You have a term for this, right? The facade of objectivity as well that this folds into. It's this notion that we are also being sold this, actively sold this by tech companies often, as well as our governments, as if this metric data-driven system is also democratizing. It is populist. It is access expanding. But what you're describing is the thing that I think I have felt and have been frustrated by, which is the decline in the value of expertise, of editorial judgment, of human decision-making.
This is...
Yes. Yeah, okay, so what he's about to say, I just love it. Let me know what you guys think.
So exactly the center of what's going on. It's a painful thought, but the thought is that there's a downside to accessibility, and there's a downside to a kind of fast democratization. I mean, I think a lot about recipes. Lorraine Daston talks about this movement in recipes between a kind of more complicated recipe that requires a lot of apprenticeship to understand, and this kind of hyper-clear modern recipe. So recipes, as you think of them now, they didn't used to be like that, right? Old school recipes looked like this. So if you look, I have some cookbooks from the 1920s, and what they look like is they're like, well, knead some eggs and some water and flour and keep adding water until it feels just under sticky, and then you knead it till it's nice and gummy, and then bake it until it like sounds ringing when knocked. That's actually a really good recipe if you know what you're doing. Modern recipes are like 2 cups sugar.
So if we think about the old recipes, original recipes, they required intuition, sensory awareness. They required experience with cooking and judgment. But most of all, these old recipes, they required trust in yourself.
3 cups flour. And what they give you is accessibility. Anyone can follow them. What they rob from you is the cues to adapt and use your judgment. And this is why I cooked from cookbook recipes, and I wondered why, even though I followed them exactly, it wasn't as good as my mom's. And the reason is because my mom has cooked the thing thousands of times, and she tastes everything and adapts. And the recipe, if you follow it strictly, is not telling you to do that. But the recipe is accessible, right? Anyone can use it.
Yeah, I love that. So if we think about the old recipes versus the modern recipes that give accessibility but remove adaptation, wisdom, experience with cooking, trust in yourself, I think psychological abuse does something very similar. So a healthy childhood teaches you to pay attention to what you feel, to notice your feelings, your gut instincts, notice your needs, trust your internal cues. But when you learn that your needs and your reality is not important, or even worse, constantly denied, you come to learn to ignore your feelings, ignore your needs, follow the rules, just do what keeps you safe. So instead of learning the old recipe of being human, integrating your intuition, your experience, your judgment, and trust in yourself, what you come out with is a hyper clear survival manual. And I think that my takeaway from that analogy is that abuse creates modern recipe children. Hear me out. In abusive systems, children become obsessed with measurable outcomes so that they can feel good enough and believe that they are good enough. They become obsessed with meeting or exceeding desired metrics like, did I behave correctly today? Did I make them happy enough? Did I avoid punishment? Did I perform well enough? And in abuse, the child doesn't get the freedom to taste the mixture and adjust it. They don't get the freedom to develop their inner wisdom or to listen to that little voice that's telling them that something is off. They must learn just the exact formula so they don't get hurt. Modern recipes rob you of the cues to adapt and to use your judgment. Modern recipes do not trust the people making the cake. That is one of the most perfect definitions, I think, of psychological abuse I've ever heard. It robs you of your internal cues. Children in these homes, they do come out of them lacking emotional attunement, shutting down their own gut instincts, coming out with a fractured sense of self, an inability to trust themselves or to know what they need or to know what they're even feeling because they're so disconnected from their own needs and their own feelings. They come out of these homes without any confidence in their own judgment. They're often externally referenced, just like somebody who can only cook if the instructions are precise and perfect and right in front of them. But when he says, my mom's food was better because she used the old recipes, she used her intuition, her experience, her trust in herself, her knowledge, this line is huge. He's saying that his mom's cooking was better because she tasted everything and adapted it. And isn't that what healthy adulthood is all about? I think that to heal is to return to the old recipe, to learn to cook again without a strict measuring cup, but tasting your mixture, adapting it, trusting yourself again. And there was part of this episode that I did not include tonight in the clips, but it was this guy saying that he had a girl reach out to him, how after one of his talks that he gave, her life was completely radically changed. That she had been struggling for years with depression and her life took an upward swing and it was radically changed after one of his talks. And she said that after the talk, she changed the background wallpaper on her iPhone. And the line that she chose a quote for her background. And she changed it to the following quote: "Is this the game you really want to be playing?" So that when she would open her phone every time, she would see this quote: "Is this the game you really want to be playing?" And when I think about all of this together, games, metrics, family systems, the old versus the new, modern recipe type of child, I keep coming back to the same idea that the meaning of a game is not just the score. In fact, it's mostly not the score at all. It's the process of playing the game. In basketball, the value is not just putting the ball through the hoop, like he said, because if it were, you could take a ladder into an empty gym at night and score 1,000 points, but those 1,000 points would be meaningless. And I think people have the wrong idea of healing sometimes too. I think what healing often looks like is learning to stop living or playing the game by someone else's metrics. The value of healing is not what a lot of people think it is. It's not just showing up at a therapist's office. It's not just taking a medication. It's learning to trust your own cues again. It's learning to figure out what you need, figure out what you feel, like the old recipes, developing your wisdom and your intuition, trusting your own judgment again. It's hard work, actually. It's ugly, actually. It's facing yourself in the mirror, your full self, all the terrible things you've done, all the mistakes you've made, accepting all of yourself, flaws and everything, and deciding what you want to actively unlearn that you were taught by your dysfunctional family. It's choosing which values are not your own and which values you do hold. Oftentimes, it's a painful process of actually forgiving yourself for who you've been and what you've done when you didn't know any better. Trauma trains you to follow rigid rules, but healing teaches you to live intuitively again. and maybe the most important questions we can ask ourselves, especially if you grew up inside of a manipulative system or abuse, etc., are the following questions. And I have been asking myself these questions today. First is, whose game am I playing? And you could think about this in multiple different respects. You could think about this in all aspects of your life, actually. Spiritually, whose game are you playing? As a parent, whose game are you playing? As a friend, whose game are you playing? At work, whose game are you playing? At home, whose game are you playing? In your friendships, whose game are you playing? And who gave me this scoreboard? Think about your goals. Think about what you aspire to do. Think about when you feel the best about yourself, like you've accomplished something. What is the scoreboard? What are the metrics that you are using? Who taught you these rules? And then last, is this actually the game I want to spend my entire life playing? Is it? Is it an enjoyable game? Is it a rewarding game? Or does the game you're playing make you feel like you are drowning? Does it make you feel constrained, depressed, trapped? How do you feel playing this game? And if this video resonated with you, I would love to hear from you in the comments. Have you ever had a realization already that you were chasing a metric that wasn't really yours? Have you ever felt trapped in a game that you didn't choose? And if you're in the process of healing, what does it look like for you to reclaim your own values? I see this comment, no games, just living life. I don't mean literal games in this sense. I mean, everybody grows up in a family and in a certain culture in society. And a lot of the way you see the world and the way you see yourself is shaped by your family, by the society that you're living in. And so asking yourself these questions about what game you're playing is not about literally, am I playing Scrabble tonight? Am I playing bingo? And that's not it. It's analyzing, where do my values come from? Where do my beliefs come from? Where do my goals come from? Where do, all of these metrics that I'm trying to achieve come from? I just wanted to play a few of these comments and respond. I'm just Jules says, this is how they will install a social credit system to control behavior. Our youth are already invested in the system, but we see it also in social media by way of top fan badges, super chat, etc. Yes. So I think that anytime there is a chance to have a social credit system to control behavior, I think organizations, and especially for-profit companies, businesses, whatever, they will naturally try to control behavior in this way. I see it a lot. I notice it a lot, at least through language and who controls the definition of language in today's society. Yeah. Well, thank you guys for being here. I also just wanted to say, I echo this. Thank you, Gnostic. 1P. He says, keep up the great work. Whether you agree or disagree, stay warm, stay honest. Yes, you're always free to disagree with me. I mean, that goes without saying. You can disagree with me. My big thing is I'm fine with disagreement. I disagree with a lot of people too. We can have a civil discussion. We don't have to hate each other. If you disagree with one thing that I say, you don't have to unfollow me. That goes with anyone in life. If you agree with everything that everyone believes, that one person believes, that is disturbing. You should disagree, have some disagreements with every person in your life. Otherwise, it's kind of like a sign that you are not making up your own mind about things and not thinking critically and not forming your own opinions. So that's a huge thing I see, that people think that if you have a disagreement, it's an attack and they take it as a personal attack. It's not. You can have a civil disagreement. So that's part of life. It's a really important part of life, actually. Please like this video if you enjoy it. I have my weekly live show on Wednesday nights, so that's tomorrow night. I'm going to be talking about Dr. Childress's book, Foundations. Now, this is going to be episode 2 of the season 2. My first weekly live show was on therapy for alienated kids. If you haven't seen that, I would go check that out. It's just 3 episodes. 3 episodes. And I had a great time researching for that series. I learned a lot. I think I was able to present a lot of helpful information. This series is on Dr. Childress's book called Foundations, which is a game changer for understanding this pathology. The first episode was last Wednesday, and if you weren't there for the first one, it is recorded in my playlist, Foundations by Dr. Childress. It was also just the introduction, though, so you didn't miss much. Tomorrow night is Family Systems, Chapter 1. If you really want to understand this pathology comprehensively, if you want to understand what you're up against or what you've lived through, join me tomorrow night, 5 p.m. Mountain Standard, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard. I will see you guys then. Thank you for being here, and everybody have a great night. Bye.